The incredible ways female pirates inflicted punishment that you'd never expect in the far reaches of the Andromeda expanse. Humanity had begun spreading among the stars. Many planets were harsh, barren, or unstable, but humans were determined. They built colonies on rocky worlds, floating stations around gas giants, and even cities inside massive asteroids. Life was never easy in space, and lawlessness often followed where humans went. Space pirates roamed trade routes, raiding supply ships and leaving destruction behind. Amid this chaos, a name began to appear in reports, whispered in trade hubs and across colonies: Captain Selene. She was not like other pirates. Unlike the ruthless bands who relied on firepower, her crew was entirely women, trained not only in combat but in intelligence, tactics, and strategy. More importantly, they relied on wit over violence. Stories of their clever methods spread faster than news of any battle or raid. Selene was young but remarkably sharp. Her mind moved like a computer, seeing patterns in chaos that others missed. She could predict enemy movements, calculate probabilities, and devise solutions no one else could imagine. Her crew admired her not because she was fierce, but because she made them better, smarter, and stronger. It all began on the colony of Vega 12, a mining world at the edge of human territory. Pirates had become a serious problem, attacking transport ships and even small colonies. The governing council of Vega 12 had little hope. Their security ships were outdated, underfunded, and poorly trained. That's when Selene arrived. Her first encounter was subtle. She didn't attack the pirates head-on. Instead, she observed them, studying their ships, patterns, and communication signals. Using small drones, she followed their movements, learning their routines. Within days, she identified their weaknesses. The pirates had relied on predictability. They always followed the same paths when returning from raids. Selene's plan was simple but brilliant. She deployed holographic decoy ships, each one identical to the colony's transport vessels. The pirates, thinking they were attacking real targets, flew into ambushes of non-lethal traps. Their ships were caught in netting fields, their engines disabled temporarily by electromagnetic pulses, leaving them harmless but stunned. The pirates were shocked. They expected to capture or destroy, but instead they found themselves trapped, confused, and frustrated. Selene boarded their ship personally, not with guns, but with a small crew of her best tacticians. They redirected the pirate resources, food, equipment, and supplies, back to the miners they had been plundering. By the time the authorities arrived, the pirates were outsmarted, not beaten. They had lost everything they intended to steal, and their pride was deeply wounded. The miners cheered Selene and her crew, not only for saving them but for showing that brains could outmatch force. News of the Vega 12 encounter spread rapidly. Other colonies began to whisper about the female pirates who outsmarted pirates. Traders altered routes to avoid potential conflicts, not out of fear of violence, but out of respect for clever strategy. Selene's methods were unique. She never used unnecessary force. She avoided harm whenever possible. Her punishments were designed to teach lessons, redirect behavior, and protect human lives. Some rivals tried to challenge her, thinking she was weak or untested, but they quickly learned otherwise. One notable incident occurred in the Nebula Belt, a dangerous region of drifting asteroids and collapsing stars. A fleet of pirates had been harassing miners and traders, growing bold and reckless. Selene had only a small team, fewer ships than the enemy, and limited ammunition. Most would have fled, but she had a plan. Using her knowledge of the asteroids, Selene created an artificial maze of gravitational traps and magnetic fields. As the pirate fleet pursued her, their ships became tangled in invisible currents, unable to move or coordinate. Selene didn't fire a single shot. Instead, she sent a simple message across their comms: "We have studied your paths, we know your patterns. Leave now and we will let you return to your homes unharmed. The pirates had no choice. Their own overconfidence and predictable tactics had trapped them. They surrendered, humiliated but alive, leaving the belt and vowing never to return. These early victories were only the beginning. Seleni's reputation grew because she demonstrated something rare in the galaxy. Humans could overcome danger through intelligence, creativity, and discipline. Colonists began to admire her not just as a pirate but as a protector, someone who could outthink and outmaneuver threats without unnecessary bloodshed. Her crew was just as remarkable as she was. Each member had a specialty. Some were engineers who could repair or sabotage ships silently. Others were communicators who could intercept or mimic signals. And a few were navigators with unmatched skill in plotting courses through treacherous regions. Together, they were more than a pirate crew. They were human ingenuity personified. Selene also emphasized training. She often held exercises for her crew, turning every mistake into a learning opportunity. They simulated pirate raids, navigated asteroid fields, and practiced strategic planning. Discipline and teamwork were as important as courage. In this way, Selene created a culture where thinking quickly, acting decisively, and respecting human life were paramount. The galaxy began to take notice. Traders, colonists, and even governments watched Selene's movements closely. Her tactics became case studies for strategists and engineers. It wasn't enough to build powerful ships or weapons. The true power lay in understanding behavior, predicting outcomes, and applying intelligence creatively. Selene's personal philosophy was simple. Force is temporary. Cleverness is forever. She believed that victory through fear was fleeting, but victory through strategy earned respect, loyalty, and lasting influence. Despite her growing fame, she remained humble. She never sought titles or personal gain beyond what was necessary for her crew's survival. Her actions were guided by a sense of fairness, ethics, and the understanding that humanity could only thrive if intelligence and creativity were valued over violence. By the end of the Vega 12 campaign, Selene had become a legend in her own time. Parents told their children stories of the young captain who outsmarted pirates with nothing more than cleverness, holograms, and strategic traps. Her name inspired a generation of humans to value thinking ahead, solving problems, and using intellect to face danger. It was clear that Selene's journey had only begun. The galaxy was vast, filled with challenges and unpredictable threats. But if these early encounters were any indication, her crew of female pirates would continue to outthink, outmaneuver, and outshine every opponent they faced, not through violence, but through the power of human ingenuity. And so Captain Selene rose not as a conqueror or a destroyer, but as a symbol of cleverness, resilience, and hope, a shining example that humans, even in the most dangerous and uncharted regions of space, could succeed through intelligence, strategy, and creativity. The galaxy was a vast place, full of stars, planets, and dangers that could surprise even the bravest humans. Pirates and raiders roamed freely, targeting unprotected colonies and trade ships. But Captain Selene and her crew had grown skilled at facing these threats without unnecessary harm. By now, their reputation had spread across multiple star systems. Humans and aliens alike spoke of the female pirates who could outsmart any opponent using cleverness instead of weapons. Selene had a simple belief: battles should be won with the mind first, and force only as a last resort. She often reminded her crew, a clever solution lasts longer than a strong punch. And this philosophy shaped every action she took. One day, a distress signal reached the crew. A convoy of supply ships from the colony of Leora 7 had been captured by a fleet of rogue pirates. These pirates were known for being bold and reckless. They had taken control of the convoy's main ship and were demanding heavy tribute from the colony. Selene's approach was not to attack immediately. Instead, she studied the pirate fleet from a safe distance. Using small surveillance drones and hidden satellites, she mapped the pirates' patrol patterns, their formation, and even their favorite escape routes. Within hours, she had a plan that would surprise everyone. Her first tactic was distraction. She deployed a series of holographic ships, identical to her own vessels, but spread across the sector in seemingly random positions. The pirates noticed them immediately. Believing they were under attack from multiple fronts, they focused on chasing these decoys, leaving the convoy unguarded. Next, Selene used the environment to her advantage. The convoy had been captured near a cluster of floating ice asteroids. She calculated the gravitational pull and trajectory of the ice fields, creating a path that only she and her crew could navigate safely. When the pirates tried to follow her to intercept, they found themselves trapped in shifting ice fields, unable to maneuver without risking collision. Selene's tactics were not about hurting anyone. Instead, they were humiliating and confusing for the pirates. Their arrogance had been their downfall. From her observation deck, Selene watched as the pirate ships scrambled, firing in random directions, trying to free themselves from the ice. Her crew, calm and composed, guided the convoy to safety without firing a single shot. After the convoy was secure, Selene sent a message to the pirates. It was simple, but it carried a lesson. Your greed led you into a trap. You have your ships, your crew, and your pride. Think carefully before crossing human colonies again. The pirates had no choice but to retreat, shaken and embarrassed. No lives were lost, no ships destroyed, yet the pirates had learned the cost of underestimating human intelligence. This incident became widely known among traders and colonies. Selene's methods of clever punishments were now part of galactic lore. Unlike conventional punishments, which often relied on violence, Selene's methods were creative and educational. She turned mistakes into lessons without causing lasting harm. Another remarkable story came from the asteroid mining zone of Orion 14. A notorious pirate gang had established a base inside a dense asteroid field. They were taking control of mining stations, hoarding resources, and leaving miners stranded. Most would have attacked directly, but Selene had a more ingenious plan. She studied the field for days, mapping every rock, crater, and cave. Then she set up a series of traps and signals designed to confuse the pirates. Using holographic projections, she created illusions of moving asteroids and phantom ships. The pirates, unable to distinguish reality from illusion, began to fight among themselves, losing coordination and focus. Selene's crew also hacked the pirates' communication networks, sending false messages and redirecting their ships in circles. At no point did Selene fire a weapon. She and her crew simply manipulated perception, using strategy and technology to neutralize the threat. When the pirates finally realized they had been tricked, it was too late. Their base had been compromised, supplies taken, and their morale crushed. They had learned an important lesson. Brains were far more powerful than brute force. Selene's tactics were admired not only for their intelligence but also for their ethical approach. She avoided unnecessary harm, focusing instead on correction, redirection, and prevention. Colonists began to see her as more than a pirate. She was a protector and a teacher. Even rival pirate captains began to take notice. Many attempted to challenge Selene, thinking they could outsmart her. One of the most daring attempts occurred in the Helios sector, where a fleet of 5 pirate ships ambushed a human trade convoy. Selene's crew, though smaller in number, was prepared. She devised a multi-layered strategy. First, she created decoy ships to draw the pirates' attention. Then, she used magnetic fields to interfere with their engines, slowing them down without causing damage. Meanwhile, she sent small autonomous drones to subtly alter the pirates' navigation systems. The result was chaos for the attackers. They found themselves moving in the wrong directions, unable to reach the convoy. The cleverest part of Seleni's plan was her use of reverse psychology. She broadcasted a message pretending to surrender the convoy if the pirates would retreat. The pirates, overconfident and eager for victory, fell for the ruse. As they advanced, the drones redirected them toward a safe but immobilizing trap, leaving them stranded and bewildered. Seleni's crew quickly guided the convoy to safety, and the pirates were forced to retreat. Again, no one was hurt, but the lesson was clear. Never underestimate human intelligence. Her methods became legendary because they combined strategy, ethics, and creativity. Colonists began to study her tactics, hoping to apply them to other challenges, from pirate threats to natural disasters. Schools in human colonies even began teaching Seleni's principles of strategy, emphasizing thinking ahead, problem-solving, and using the environment wisely. Seleni's influence was not limited to her crew or her direct actions. Other humans who heard her stories began to emulate her methods. Traders learned to plan routes more carefully, engineers designed smarter defensive systems, and colonists became more resourceful. Her approach showed that one clever human, or a small group of humans, could make a massive difference in the galaxy. The female pirates themselves thrived under Seleni's leadership. Each member had a special role. Engineers could repair or disable ships silently. Navigators could chart impossible paths through asteroid fields. Communicators could intercept and manipulate enemy signals. Strategists could predict enemy movements and design traps. Together, they were a force of intellect and creativity, able to handle challenges that would have destroyed ordinary crews. Seleni's approach was never about glory. She often reminded her crew, "We are here to teach, protect, and preserve. Winning through violence is easy. Winning through cleverness is lasting." Her words shaped a culture where intelligence, patience, and ethics were more valued than firepower or brute strength. Over time, stories of her creative punishments began to spread far beyond human space. Even alien civilizations took notice. They saw that humans, though physically weaker than some species, had a remarkable ability to innovate and adapt, turning dangerous situations into opportunities for learning and growth. By the end of her campaigns in this period, Selene had established a clear pattern: observe and analyze first. Know your opponent before acting. Use intelligence, not force, whenever possible. Teach lessons rather than punish cruelly. Turn threats into opportunities. These principles became the hallmark of Selene's legendary career. Colonies across the galaxy began to feel safer, smarter, and more inspired, knowing that humans could face any challenge with cleverness and determination. And so, Captain Selene and her crew continued their journey, outsmarting enemies, protecting colonies, and building a legacy of human ingenuity. The galaxy learned a new truth. Sometimes, the greatest power was not in weapons or numbers, but in the ability to think, plan, and act with intelligence and creativity. Captain Selene and her crew had already made a name for themselves across multiple star systems. Traders spoke of them in hushed tones, and colonists eagerly shared stories of their clever tactics. But Selene's true power did not lie in her fame. It lay in her ability to teach lessons through clever strategy, leaving a lasting mark on everyone she encountered. After the successful rescue of the Leora 7 convoy, Selene noticed a pattern among the galaxy's rogue pirates. They were not necessarily evil. Many were young, inexperienced, or desperate. They often attacked because they believed humans could not defend themselves. Selene realized that the most effective way to stop these attacks was not to destroy them, but to guide them toward better choices. Her approach became a kind of ethical strategy. She would set up situations where pirates could learn from their mistakes, experience the consequences of poor planning, and see the value of thinking ahead, all without anyone being harmed. This method was revolutionary in a galaxy where most conflicts were solved through firepower. One famous incident took place near the twin moons of Vesper 9. A group of inexperienced pirates had captured a shipment of medical supplies intended for a remote colony. Seleni's crew approached carefully, using advanced sensors to observe the pirates' behavior. They discovered that the pirates were disorganized, often ignoring each other's advice and following rigid routines. Instead of attacking directly, Selene employed a clever ruse. She disguised her ship as a derelict vessel drifting in space. The pirates, eager to claim more loot, approached the ship, expecting easy gains. Once aboard, they triggered a series of automated puzzle-like challenges set by Selene's team. The pirates were faced with harmless but tricky tasks, such as navigating mazes of shifting corridors and solving logic puzzles to proceed. At first, the pirates were frustrated and confused. They had expected to take what they wanted with no effort. But as the challenges continued, they began to think critically, communicate with each other, and plan their steps more carefully. What started as punishment became a learning experience. Selene and her crew observed from a safe distance, ready to intervene if anyone made a dangerous mistake. By the end of the exercise, the pirates had completed the challenges and realized that their own carelessness had led them into a trap, not through violence, but through clever strategy. Selene appeared before them to offer a simple choice: return the supplies to the colony and leave peacefully, or continue their reckless path and face more challenges designed to teach lessons. The pirates chose to return the supplies. Though their pride was slightly wounded, they left with new respect for human ingenuity. News of this encounter spread quickly, and colonies began to understand that humans could teach, guide, and influence behavior through intelligence alone. Another remarkable example came from the asteroid fields near Cygnus 3. A gang of pirates had set up a hidden base to intercept mining shipments. Selene decided to use environmental manipulation rather than combat. She and her crew carefully studied the asteroid field, noting which paths were unstable and which could shift with slight gravitational adjustments. Using subtle gravitational devices, her crew altered the movement of asteroids, creating an intricate obstacle course that the pirates did not notice at first. When the pirates attempted to reach a shipment, they found themselves trapped in the shifting rocks, forced to stop and think about their navigation choices. Selene then broadcasted a calm message: "The galaxy is bigger than your greed. Learn to plan your moves before acting." The pirates eventually retreated, realizing that their success depended not on brute force but on foresight and strategy. Selene's approach impressed even nearby trade officials, who began to study her methods for improving colony defenses without resorting to violence. Selene's lessons were not limited to pirates. She also guided her own crew and the colonists she protected. She emphasized teamwork, observation, and creative problem-solving. Every mission, every trap, and every rescue was an opportunity to learn. Crew members were encouraged to think ahead, anticipate challenges, and develop multiple solutions. Mistakes were treated as opportunities for growth rather than reasons for punishment. This philosophy had a lasting impact on human colonies. Trade routes became safer, as merchants and transport pilots learned to observe, plan, and prepare. Colony leaders became more strategic in governance, using intelligence and careful planning to prevent conflict rather than reacting with force. Even young humans began to admire the value of cleverness and strategy over strength. Selene's influence reached beyond human space. Some alien species took notice, curious about how a small crew could consistently outsmart larger and more powerful forces. Envoys and explorers visited colonies to study human ingenuity in action, hoping to understand the principles behind Selene's successes. Her crew's methods were shared as examples of ethical and effective strategy, emphasizing teaching, learning, and respect for life. A memorable campaign occurred near the planet Altair 6. A group of pirates had trapped a fleet of transport ships between two asteroid belts. Most would have attacked directly, but Selene saw an opportunity for a lesson. She instructed her crew to create false signals that made the pirates believe a larger fleet was approaching. Panic spread among the attackers, causing them to make mistakes and collide with their own ships. Selene then offered the pirates a clear choice: retreat or continue being outsmarted. The pirates chose to leave, and no lives were lost. The transport ships were freed, and the colony received its goods safely. Once again, Selene's approach emphasized cleverness over destruction. Over time, the galaxy began to recognize a pattern. Wherever Selene went, conflicts were resolved with minimal harm but maximum learning. Colonists adopted her methods, implementing strategies that encouraged planning, observation, and creative problem-solving. Trade became safer, colonies became more resilient, and humans gained a reputation for intelligence, ethics, and ingenuity. Selene's crew grew stronger as well. Each member developed specialized skills, but all were trained to think critically and act strategically. They learned to anticipate challenges, use the environment to their advantage, and communicate effectively under pressure. Through practice and mentorship, Selene created a culture where intellect and ethics were as important as courage. Stories of her clever punishments became famous. Some pirates, after encountering Selene, went on to change their ways, realizing that humans could outthink them in ways that brute force could never match. Colonies that had once lived in fear began to thrive, inspired by the knowledge that humans could overcome adversity through intelligence, creativity, and teamwork. Selene herself remained humble. She did not seek fame or wealth. Her goal was simple: to teach, protect, and inspire, showing that humans could face any challenge with cleverness and courage. She believed that true power was measured not by the ships you commanded or the weapons you wielded, but by the ability to solve problems, guide others, and create lasting solutions. By the end of this period in her career, Selene's influence had spread far and wide. Colonies across the galaxy began adopting her principles, teaching young humans to think ahead, analyze problems, and apply intelligence creatively. Pirates learned to respect humans, and some even abandoned their reckless ways. The galaxy came to see humanity not as weak or vulnerable, but as a species capable of innovation, strategy, and ethical problem-solving. And so, Captain Selene and her crew continued their journey. Every encounter, every challenge, and every victory carved lessons into the stars. Humans across the galaxy began to understand that true strength lay not in destruction, but in intelligence, creativity, and ethical action. In this way, Selene's story became more than a tale of piracy or clever tactics. It became a legend of human potential, a reminder that even in the vast and dangerous expanse of space, humans could overcome challenges through strategy, observation, and ingenuity. Her legacy was not just about victories, but about the lessons left behind, guiding humans and teaching them the power of thinking ahead and acting wisely. Captain Selene had traveled across countless star systems, leaving behind stories that inspired and amazed. Her crew of intelligent and skilled women had demonstrated that humans could succeed not through sheer power, but through strategy, creativity, and discipline. By now, her reputation had reached the farthest colonies of human space. People no longer feared pirates blindly. Instead, they respected the power of a clever mind. Selene understood that her influence could extend beyond the immediate victories of her crew. Every encounter with pirates or hostile forces was not just a battle, it was an opportunity to teach, guide, and inspire. Wherever she went, she left behind lessons carved into the minds of those who witnessed her strategies. One of her final campaigns took place near the outer rim of the Zeta Quadrant. A group of pirates had been disrupting trade routes, using intimidation and numbers to control the region. Instead of responding with violence, Cellini devised a plan that combined intelligence, observation, and psychological strategy. Her first step was to study the pirates carefully. Using satellites and stealth drones, she observed the pirate fleet's movements and routines. She discovered that the pirates relied heavily on predictable patterns and often overestimated their own skill. Cellini saw an opportunity to turn their overconfidence into a teaching moment. She deployed a series of holographic decoys and false signals, creating the illusion of multiple human fleets approaching from different directions. The pirates panicked, believing they were surrounded by a much larger force. Cellini did not attack. She simply allowed their confusion and fear to show them the consequences of poor planning. Next, Cellini's crew carefully manipulated the environment. They used small satellites to adjust asteroid movements subtly, creating a labyrinth that the pirates could not navigate easily. At every turn, the pirates faced challenges that required thought, collaboration, and problem-solving. Those who tried to rely on force alone became trapped in harmless but immobilizing fields, forced to reconsider their approach. Once the pirates recognized that their tactics had failed, Cellini sent a calm message across the comms. You have the strength and the ships, but strength without thought is wasted. Choose your next steps wisely. The pirates retreated, leaving the trade routes open and intact. Not a single life was lost, yet the lesson was clear. Intelligence and planning were more powerful than numbers or firepower. Colonists began to adopt Cellini's principles in their daily lives. They learned to anticipate problems, think creatively, and work together to find solutions. Trade routes became safer, communication networks more secure, and colonies more resilient. Cellini's approach demonstrated that even small actions could have far-reaching positive effects when guided by intelligence and ethics. Cellini also focused on her crew's growth. She encouraged them to develop their skills, take initiative, and think independently. Every crew member became a strategist, an engineer, a navigator, and a teacher. Together, they formed a model of human ingenuity at its finest, capable of solving complex problems and adapting to unexpected situations. During one campaign near the Aurora cluster, Cellini faced her most challenging test yet. A coalition of rogue pirates had formed, combining fleets to overwhelm human trade networks. Cellini had fewer ships, but she did not hesitate. She and her crew designed a plan that required perfect coordination, observation, and creativity. They began by analyzing the coalition's habits, noting which ships moved together and which were more reckless. Cellini then created a network of simulated threats, holograms, sensor distortions, and harmless obstacles that forced the pirates to split up and make mistakes. As the pirates became confused, Cellini's crew quietly rescued trapped trade ships and redirected resources to colonies in need. Finally, Cellini communicated a simple but powerful message to the pirate coalition. We do not fight because we hate. We teach because we care. Intelligence guides the way, not destruction. The pirates, unable to predict or counter the strategies, eventually disbanded. Many reconsidered their choices, understanding that humans could outthink them in ways that brute force could never match. Cellini's influence extended beyond individual colonies or fleets. Her tactics became a blueprint for human strategy across the galaxy. Schools and human settlements began teaching the principles she had demonstrated: observation, planning, creativity, and ethical problem-solving. Colonists learned to approach challenges with careful thought, cooperation, and innovation. Even alien species began to take note. Explorers from neighboring star systems studied Cellini's campaigns, fascinated by how humans, despite being physically weaker in many cases, could outsmart larger and stronger forces. Her methods showed that intelligence, adaptability, and ethical action could shape the future of civilizations, even in the vast and dangerous expanse of space. Cellini's crew continued to train and mentor new generations of humans. Young recruits were encouraged to think critically, act ethically, and solve problems creatively. They practiced navigating asteroid fields, decoding communication signals, and designing traps that could teach lessons without causing harm. Through these exercises, humans learned that the greatest power was not in weapons or numbers, but in the ability to plan, adapt, and guide others wisely. Her reputation also inspired ordinary humans. Traders, miners, and colonists began applying Cellini's principles in their own lives. They learned to anticipate challenges, avoid unnecessary risks, and find creative solutions. Communities grew stronger, safer, and more united. Cellini's final legacy was perhaps the most important. She had proven that humans could thrive through intelligence and ethical action. Her story was not about destruction or conquest. It was about teaching, guiding, and inspiring. She showed that humans could face the galaxy's dangers with courage, creativity, and thoughtfulness. As Cellini and her crew prepared to settle on a quiet planet at the edge of explored space, she reflected on her journey. The galaxy was vast, filled with challenges and unknowns. But humans had proven that they could meet those challenges not with violence alone, but with cleverness, teamwork, and ethical wisdom. Colonists, traders, and young humans all over the galaxy continued to share tales of the female pirates who had outsmarted every opponent without causing harm. Cellini's methods became legends, teaching humans that intelligence, strategy, and ethical action were the keys to success. In the end, Captain Cellini's story was a shining example of humanity, HFY, at its best. It was a story of how humans, through ingenuity, discipline, and ethical thinking, could overcome challenges, inspire others, and leave a lasting mark on the galaxy. Her legacy endured in every colony that applied her lessons, in every trade route that became safer, and in every human who learned that the greatest victories were those won through thought, creativity, and wisdom. And so the galaxy remembered her, not as a conqueror, but as a teacher, a guide, and a symbol of human potential. Captain Cellini and her crew had shown the universe that true power lay not in weapons or size, but in the mind, the heart, and the courage to act wisely. Her name became a legend, a story told for generations, inspiring humans to believe in their own ingenuity. And in every corner of space where humans thrived, her lessons lived on, carving a future where intelligence, ethics, and creativity shaped the destiny of humanity. The stars themselves seemed to shine a little brighter for humans, as though recognizing the species' ability to think, plan, and act with cleverness and care. And somewhere in the galaxy, Captain Cellini smiled quietly, knowing that her greatest victories were not battles won, but lessons taught, minds inspired, and futures shaped. By now, Captain Cellini and her crew had become more than a legend. They were a symbol of human ingenuity, courage, and creativity. Every system they touched began to see a new kind of possibility. Humans could overcome challenges through intelligence rather than violence. Colonists, traders, and even former pirates had begun to admire and respect the humans' cleverness. Cellini's crew had grown in size and skill. New members joined from different colonies, each bringing unique talents. Some were engineers, able to repair or improvise complex machinery in seconds. Others were navigators, capable of plotting routes through asteroid fields that seemed impossible. Some were strategists, thinking several steps ahead of the enemy, while others specialized in communication, decoding messages or creating holographic illusions to confuse opponents. Together, they had become the ultimate human force of strategy and innovation. One of Cellini's most remarkable campaigns occurred near the binary stars of Arcturus Prime, A coalition of pirate clans had united to dominate trade in the sector. They believed that sheer numbers and firepower would intimidate humans. Selene knew that attacking directly would be unwise. Instead, she observed, studied, and planned. She noticed patterns in the pirate fleets. They repeated their patrols at predictable times, often taking shortcuts that ignored hidden hazards. Using this knowledge, Selene devised a plan that was as creative as it was effective. She deployed holographic ships to simulate multiple human fleets attacking from all directions. The pirates, unable to distinguish real from fake, panicked and made errors. Ships collided, routes were blocked, and coordination broke down entirely. Selene's crew then used the environment to their advantage. She had mapped the star system meticulously, knowing the gravitational fields and orbital paths of planets, asteroids, and debris. Small drones subtly altered magnetic fields to create harmless but immobilizing traps. Pirate ships found themselves stuck in currents they could not escape, leaving them frustrated and confused. Selene did not attack. She broadcast a simple message to the pirate coalition. Strength is wasted without thought. Intelligence guides the way. Learn, adapt, or retreat. The pirates, realizing their overconfidence had led them into a trap, chose to leave. No one was harmed, yet the lesson was clear. Cleverness always outmatches recklessness. As her legend grew, Selene also sought to teach and inspire humans beyond her own crew. Colonies across human space began to implement strategies inspired by her methods. Trade routes were planned with careful observation and contingency strategies. Defense networks were designed to protect without unnecessary violence. Young humans were taught to think critically, solve problems creatively, and act ethically. Selene's influence reached even distant systems where humans had only recently arrived. Some colonies had been struggling with local pirate threats, while others faced natural dangers like asteroid storms or solar flares. Using her network of trained observers and drones, Selene coordinated support, offering guidance and sharing strategies that helped colonies survive and thrive. One notable success occurred on the mining colony of Orion 22. A rogue pirate fleet had been taking advantage of the isolated settlement, threatening to cut off supplies. Selene's approach was subtle yet brilliant. She deployed holographic decoy ships and redirected drones to make the pirates believe that a much larger human force had arrived. At the same time, her team helped the colonists strengthen defenses and create clever escape routes for their ships. The pirates, unable to navigate the illusions and realizing they were outsmarted, retreated. The colony had been protected without a single shot fired. The miners celebrated not just the safety of their supplies, but the realization that human ingenuity and teamwork could overcome any threat. Selene's strategies were studied and replicated across human space. Colonists learned to observe patterns, anticipate dangers, and adapt creatively. Engineers built drones capable of surveillance and defense. Navigators became experts at plotting unpredictable courses through hazardous regions. Schools began teaching Selene's principles of strategy, emphasizing critical thinking, planning, and ethical decision-making. Her influence even extended to former pirates. Some who had been defeated by Selene began to rethink their choices. They recognized that humans could outthink, outmaneuver, and outlast them. Some joined colonies as engineers or traders, contributing their skills to benefit human society instead of using them destructively. Selene had transformed adversaries into allies without resorting to force. Selene herself remained humble. She rarely sought personal recognition, focusing instead on her crew and the impact of their actions. She often reminded them, "Victory is not measured by ships destroyed, but by lives saved and lessons learned. Every challenge is a chance to teach and inspire." Her crew internalized this philosophy. Each mission became a teaching opportunity, for pirates, colonists, and themselves. They learned to think several steps ahead, solve problems creatively, and value collaboration. These lessons reinforced the human belief that intelligence, ethics, and perseverance were greater than brute strength. Over time, Cellini's legacy became institutionalized. Colonies developed academies dedicated to teaching strategic thinking and problem-solving. Engineers, navigators, and commanders trained in her methods, preparing for any challenges that might arise. Trade networks became safer, and human influence expanded across the galaxy, not through conquest, but through wisdom, planning, and human ingenuity. Cellini's story reached even alien civilizations. Many were amazed that humans, who appeared physically weaker than some species, could consistently overcome threats using strategy, creativity, and ethical planning. Envoys and scholars visited colonies to learn about Cellini's methods, hoping to understand how humans could achieve such consistent success. In one famous case, an alien trader from the star system of Trion 5 approached a colony protected by Cellini's strategies. He asked, amazed, "How can a few humans outmaneuver fleets much larger than them?" The colonists explained the principles they had learned from Cellini: observation, planning, clever use of the environment, and ethical guidance. The alien trader realized that true power lay in intelligence and ethical action, not brute force. Cellini's final campaigns emphasized this philosophy more than ever. She and her crew traveled to remote systems, helping fledgling colonies establish safe trade routes and defend against opportunistic threats. They shared their methods openly, teaching humans to observe, plan, and act wisely. Her crew became ambassadors of human ingenuity. Wherever they went, they demonstrated that thinking creatively, working together, and acting ethically could achieve more than any weapon. Colonists, traders, and even former pirates began to see humans as a species capable of shaping the galaxy through intelligence and ethical leadership. In the quiet moments between campaigns, Cellini reflected on the journey. She realized that her true legacy was not the battles won or the pirates outsmarted, but the lessons embedded in human culture. She had inspired humans to value intelligence, creativity, and ethics, shaping the future of countless colonies. And in every system where humans thrived, her influence was felt. Colonists applied her strategies to trade, exploration, and problem-solving. Young humans learned to think ahead, anticipate challenges, and collaborate effectively. Even those who had once been adversaries came to respect the power of human ingenuity guided by wisdom and ethical action. Captain Cellini's story became more than a tale of clever tactics. It became a symbol of human potential. Humans across the galaxy began to believe in their own intelligence, creativity, and ability to overcome challenges. Her methods demonstrated that victory did not require destruction, and that the greatest leaders were those who taught, inspired, and guided others. As Cellini and her crew settled on a quiet planet at the edge of human exploration, they looked back at the galaxy they had influenced. Colonies were safer, trade routes more secure, and humans more confident in their ability to think, adapt, and act wisely. Stories of clever strategies and ethical victories spread from system to system, reminding everyone that true power lay in the mind, the heart, and the courage to act thoughtfully. Her name became legendary, a symbol of HFY, humanity at its finest. Humans everywhere remembered Captain Cellini as the woman who showed the galaxy that intelligence, creativity, and ethical action could achieve what brute strength never could. And so, the galaxy continued to flourish, guided by the lessons of a few brilliant humans who proved that even in the vast, dangerous expanse of space, ingenuity, discipline, and wisdom could shape the future of civilization. Captain Cellini smiled quietly, knowing that her greatest victories were not in battles or captured ships, but in the minds she had inspired, the lives she had influenced, and the legacy of human ingenuity she had left for generations to come.